welcome to your journeys, your real estate journey, expert tips for buyers and sellers. I am Dolly Lopez, your realtor and broker in the state of Florida and Kentucky. Today, like every Thursday, I am joined by my favorite real estate attorneys, well, attorneys, period, the VPPs, Leslie, Valerie. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us, Dolly. Super excited to be with you today.
I'm very excited to talk about law, which I really enjoy our Thursday talks. So, today I want to really to talk about what area do you guys specialize in? I mean, law, it's really big spectrum. It covers a lot. So what type of law do you guys specialize in?
So we do specialize in certain areas of law. For instance, I do real estate law. I focus very heavily on the transactional side of it, and I also work on the litigation side of it. So when I say transactional, I mean representing buyers as title agents, representing sellers as their attorneys in the transaction, doing refinances as title companies. And then I'm also talking about the litigation, which means if the contract for XYZ reason has to end in litigation because buyer is suing seller or seller is suing buyer, or whatever the case may be, pursuant to the contract, to the sale contract, I also do that as well. So I am more heavily based on real estate. Leslie does real estate as well, but she's very heavy on the litigation as well, and corporate creations and corporate documents. So if you want to create a company within Florida, she'll do that. She'll also create what's called operating agreements, depending on whether you're opening up an LLC or a corporation. She'll do shareholders agreements. She works very heavily in the corporate side of the transactional world as well. And she also does litigation. So she focuses on different areas of the real estate litigation. For instance, if two owners of a property are not agreeing to how to manage the property or not agreeing that they want the property, and they want to go ahead and sell the property, but they can't agree to something, then she'll do what's called a partition action. That's a litigation case, and she focuses very heavily on that. She has several of those, and she's very well known in that area. She also deals with partnership agreements in the litigation. So if for whatever reason corporations are not agreeing, the partnerships are not agreeing, the shareholders are not agreeing, the managers are not agreeing, she'll step in and she'll assist in that as well. And then we have Lisbeth, who is our other partner. She focuses heavy on trial as well. She's a trial attorney. So she focuses on all the trials that are here at VPP Law Firm, and she does defamation cases, and she does registration of trademarks. So she handles that area of the law, and she knows it very well. And obviously she does what's called commercial litigation, which is something that Leslie does as well, which is basically the bulk of litigation, going to and initiating a lawsuit or having to defend a lawsuit.
Good. So what type of law you guys don't do and normally call you guys for?
We don't do several areas. We don't practice. We don't take cases, for example, related to family law matters. We can represent people in those areas, but we are always willing to provide them with a referral of a colleague of us that we highly recommend in that area, and they can just call our office at the same number and ask for a referral of an attorney that does practice family law, and we will happily provide that information. We also don't practice in the criminal defense area, it's a very completely different world. We focus our firm in civil, whether that be transactional, as Valerie explained, in real estate, or contracts or agreements between people, or if you need to sue or you're getting sued for money damages or an injunction, then that's how we get involved in that type of civil area of the law. But criminal defense, that we don't take cases of that area. We also don't do anything related to personal injury, whether that be medical malpractice, slip and fall, car accidents, or medical negligent security. There are various personal injury cases that can be brought in different scenarios. We don't take any of those either. Unless, for example, in the car accident area, we do help people defend the litigation cases in court because they're being sued for an accident related issue. And then on those cases, we step in because it's a litigation civil case. And then we can help him defend his argument or his position in court. But actually doing a car accident from scratch and trying to get people, any kind of benefits from that, then that we don't handle.
So I think it might be a good course of action to call you guys whenever they have any legal questions, and then they can find out if you guys do that type of law, or that, specialize in that aspect of law, or you don't, and then you can refer to another colleague.
It's always best to call when in doubt, because our assistants are going to be able to guide you and be able to let you know whether that is something that we specify in, or guide you into another attorney who could help you with that.
Yeah, we don't do probate. I just remember.
Oh, that's right.
We don't do probate. We help people, some estate planning. So if people wants to do their will and they want to set up a company to be the owner of a property that they own, that's fine. That's contract law, because it's something that we can draft and it will be used later on. But as far as going to court to open a probate matter and help that person, to be the personal representative of the state of somebody that died, that part we don't handle. But again, we can provide always a referral.
Good. Okay. It's just, we normally, I wanted for you guys to say what you guys do, because we normally talk about real estate law. Obviously, I'm a real estate broker, so that's what I heavily focus on. But I know a lot of my followers and your followers, because we do this, and you guys are really well known in our community. They might just think that you guys do real estate law. So it would be good to explain that it's a little bit more than that. Now, let's talk about real estate law. Why do you think a real estate attorney needs to be at a closing? What would you suggest for a buyer or a seller to have a real estate attorney representing their interest?
So I think with that question, it's better responded to when we focus on just one side. So there's going to be two sides of every closing, right? We're going to have a buyer and then we're going to have a seller. So as far as coming and talking about the buyer, so whether a buyer should have an attorney represent them, and what the difference is between a buyer and just having a title agent. Here in Florida, to become a title agent, you do not have to be an attorney. So there are some title companies out there that are not attorney owned. We are an attorney owned title company, and here are the benefits of having an attorney owned title company.
Let me say, most of them are title companies.
Yeah.
Most of them don't have attorneys. Yes. Once again, I'm in real estate and I do this where I live in, and I worked with a lot of title companies, and most of them, they do not have an attorney on staff. I'm sorry, I just needed to mention that.
No, that's okay. And it's very true. A lot don't have an attorney on staff, and that's a disadvantage to buyers. And the huge issue that sometimes buyers think like, no, I'm going to pay more money because it's an attorney owned title company as opposed to a title company. That's not right. That's incorrect. We have competitive rates just like title companies do. So it's not really much of a difference. And at the end, you're going to have a legal protection with an attorney that you do not have with a title agent. So a lot of the times, unfortunately, some transactions are not as smooth as you would want them to be. And there's a little hiccups on the road. And when those hiccups come up, or when those bumps in the road come, you will have an attorney, a legal representative protecting your rights and interests in that transaction. For example, a huge issue that I find a lot of times with buyers when we represent title companies is that they're unaware of the situation. They're unaware of the process. They're unaware of what's going on, because it's not very common for people to buy properties. People probably buy properties 1, 2, maybe even 3 times in their lifetime. So it's very, very important that a buyer understands the process and what they're getting themselves into. The documents that they're signing at the closing table is the most important, right? Because what they're signing at the closing table, if it's a finance deal, it's going to be about 100 pages. And it's 100 pages of legal documents where you have obligations that you're signing away, and you have rights that you have to know that you have to abide by. So it's very important that a buyer understands what it is that they're signing, what their loan terms are. Are they going to change? Is it a variable interest rate? Is it a fixed interest rate? What are my monthly payments? Are my monthly payments subject to change? Do I have an escrow account? Do I not have an escrow account? And if I don't have an escrow account, what responsibilities do I have? So it's very important that all those questions would be answered by an attorney, because a title agent is not going to spend their time, because one, it'd be the illegal practice of law, and two, because they just don't do it. They don't do it because they don't have to do it, right? Because they're just saying, oh, these are your loan documents. The title company doesn't create them. Your lender does. If you have questions, go ahead and contact your lender.
And beyond that,
it's too late. At that point, you're already signing, and you don't even know what you're signing.
And beyond that, let's just say a problem arises and the closing cannot occur, then the questions come all the time. What am I going to do about my escrow? What is going to happen with my contract? What's going to happen with the actual closing? Is it moving forward? Do I have a right to enforce the contract under specific performance in court? And all of those questions would not be answered by a title agent, because they simply don't understand, and they're going to just wash their hands and say, hey, you need to hire an attorney. But if you had already hired an attorney to handle your closing, then you don't need to spend an extra money to help you understand what your rights are and what the next step is to get you where you want to be. Or if you have, if you don't have any choice, and then your only choices are A, B, and C, and help you decide from, explaining the consequences of each choice, which one adapt more to, to your liking.
Right.
And it's important to say that whenever we are negotiating a contract, and that would be on my end, when I'm helping buyers negotiate a contract or sellers negotiate a contract, one of the parties chooses the closing company. And if it happens to be that the opposite side chooses the closing company and it cannot be negotiated any further for any reason, let's say I'm representing a buyer, the seller chooses the closing company. Can my buyer be represented by you guys? I mean, the closing is happening in another place, but I want my client to be able to talk to an attorney, have an attorney explain the documents, and if they have any questions, to go directly to the attorneys that they have just hired to explain to them any consequence or legal consequence that any actions might might happen.
Right.
Right.
So is that a possibility?
Yes, absolutely. We do it all the time. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, I had a closing where I wasn't even part of the closing. I was just the attorney reviewing the closing package, because it was outside of Miami-Dade and Broward, and the seller got to choose the title company. And guess what? It was not owned by an attorney. So when my client went to the location to sign the paperwork and started asking questions, they wouldn't be able to explain anything that he was signing. So he was like, okay, let's take a step back. It was a cash deal. It's a very important investment that he was making. So let's just give me a couple of days. I need to review this with an attorney, and then I'll be back. And then that's exactly how I got involved. I explained every single document. We solicited changes to some of the documents that were required at closing, and then he came back and did the closing. I wasn't even part of the actual transaction day. I was in the behind scenes, making sure that whatever language needed to be added, modified, or whatever document was required pursuant to title commitment, which is one of the things that you need to obtain before a closing, to understand what the title insurance will be, right? And then explain all of that to the client, and he felt informed, he felt happier, and he felt that he knew what he was walking into, even though I wasn't physically, present at that closing. But, he took the steps correctly to make sure that his rights were protected.
I'm kind of surprised that some clients are willing, obviously, to purchase a property, $300,000, $500,000, $800,000, and they're not willing to take the extra step to be legally protected and to really understand the legal consequences of an action, or
and that's so and that's just so unfortunate, because if you think of the grand scheme of things, right, you're purchasing a significant amount of money you're using in order to purchase this property, because properties are not cheap, especially nowadays. So why not spend that extra money to make sure that you are protected? Because a lot of the times what happens is that our clients don't come to us before the closing. They close on the property. And then a month, 2 months later, they call us and they tell us, hey, listen, I need an attorney because this is the situation that's going on. I'm paying, this much money for my mortgage and it was supposed to be this much. And I don't understand what's happening. So now you hired us post, the closing. Now it's very hard to impossible to change any documents that you've already signed. Why? Because you already signed them. And because your right to have them revised or your right to have the terms explained to you have come and gone. So
and it would be way more expensive to hire an attorney at that point than to just hire for the transaction. That it comes with a lot of, overseeing the whole thing and making
right.
sure that everything goes smooth and that your rights are protected. And it's not charged, separately. It's all
No.
included in the same transaction.
And what's so unfortunate too that we see so much is the afterwards, the hiring us afterwards. There's no guarantee. There's
Right.
no guarantee. When we're talking about litigation, when we're talking about having to sue somebody, there you may have all the right in this world. We may even say, listen, the law's on your side. But at the end of the day, it could be 6 people from the street who you don't know who are deciding your fate, who are deciding whether or not you are right or wrong. So it's very important to understand that. Protect yourself before you even get to the point of having a litigation. Prevent that as much as you can.
And that's exactly why I say it's crucial, the role of a real estate lawyer to be in your closing and to protect your interest. We're not talking, let's say that, the buyer chose the attorneys, the seller can still be protected. And can you talk me a little bit about why is it important the seller have an attorney as well in the state of Florida?
So it's actually very, very, not only in my opinion is it important, I think it's absolutely needed. It's a requirement, in my opinion, for a seller to have an attorney. And the reason being is because the seller conveyance documents, the documents that the seller has to sign at closing, are legally binding documents. What that means is that they're documents that must be redacted by an attorney. An attorney must draft those documents. No other person is allowed to draft legal documents if you are not an attorney, if you're not a licensed attorney, which is also very important to point out.
Yeah.
So those documents are so crucial because these are the documents that are going to be transferring ownership from you to this new person. And we need to make sure that they're redacted correctly. Because if they're not redacted correctly, you could be looking at a future lawsuit in your future. And that's money that you're going to have to pay out of pocket for. So it's very important that those documents be not only redacted correctly, but explained to you. Because they could be drafted correctly, but then they're not explained to you. And now you're agreeing and you're signing off on things where you're saying that there's no tenant and there is a tenant, or that there's no other mortgages and you forgot there was a home equity line of credit on there. So it's very important that these documents not only be redacted by an attorney, but be explained to you completely so that you understand what it is you're attesting to.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because whenever a buyer actually chooses the company to do closing, the seller, they don't have any. They should definitely have one to represent their interest in the transaction. A real estate attorney, real estate broker, real estate agent, or realtor, we only will help with the transaction, but we're not attorneys. We don't advise on legal documents. We don't advise on I can tell you what it says because I read it, but I am not an attorney. So any realtor that says otherwise, go ahead.
And Dolly, a simple thing could be a seller asking, well, I got a violation yesterday, right before the closing, for A, B, and C from the county. Should I keep quiet? Should I disclose it, to these people? What if they don't want to close? And that's when an attorney steps in and say, well, let me tell you, the consequences of not disclosing could be A, B, and C. Are you willing to run that risk? And if you're required, you have to go back to the contract and see what was negotiated between the parties. Is he required to disclose this specific violation. It may have not, but it may be very clear in the contract that he needs to disclose upon knowledge. And then that's, that's when an attorney can, make sense of some stubborn people that, they want to keep things,
Yeah, in the gray area.
the gray area, and you're like, listen, you're gonna face way more penalties, and you're gonna spend so much money just avoiding a problem that at some point is going to, explode.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So, guys, we're not talking about. It's not that the attorneys. I don't know how much you guys charge. I just think I've seen, and it's very competitive with any title company. To be honest, some title companies are a little bit more expensive.
Mhm.
That's what I've seen. However, whenever you have a closing company doing their own thing, but you have your real estate attorneys representing your interest, we're not talking about $10,000, $20,000, not even $5,000. So it's, from my perspective, I think it's worth having a real estate attorney on your side whenever you're talking about a real estate attorney. So we were talking about this the other day. Whenever you go to the doctor, you don't, because something happened to you, you don't want the receptionist to help you. You want to see the doctor because they are the experts, and you want to be taken care of by the doctor. And I feel that's so true. But also in the legal matters, anything that's legal related, anything that you put your signature on, anything that could be a contract, you really need an attorney to help you, and an attorney that specializes in that specific area. I mean,
That's what's so important, right? Because and think of it in the more simplistic way. If you're having headaches, you're not going to go to an orthopedic, right? Or an orthopedic, because they focus on other area. You're going to go to someone who focuses on what your issue is. So it's super important to know that, to do that, and get yourself the right attorney that actually has experience in the area and understands the area of real estate and the complexities and intricacies of it.
yep. So, ladies, thank you so much to be with us and to help guide our audience and followers. Guys, remember to share, subscribe to our channel, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok channels, anything, you name it, we're there. Follow us for more information. How can you guys be contacted? And it's the number is normally running, but wanted you guys to say it.
So you can always call our office. We're open Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. You can call at 305-549-8280. Even if you're calling us after hours, please leave us a message, leave us a voicemail. You can also text us to that number, and we will return your call, return your text as soon as we come back the following day. Or you could email us. Our emails are our names. So it would be my first name, Valerie, at vpplawfirm.com. Or it would be Leslie at vpplawfirm.com.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much. I'll see you guys next Thursday.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye.